Most relationships don't end with one big betrayal. They fade slowly through ignored conversations, emotional distance, and patterns people brush off as normal. If you keep ignoring these signs, your relationship may not last, even if you still love each other. Healthy relationships are not conflict-free. Disagreements happen in every partnership. What matters is how couples respond to those disagreements over time. Today, we'll explore 7 warning signs that a relationship may be drifting into dangerous territory. These signs are rooted in relationship psychology and reflect patterns therapists commonly see in struggling couples. Some of these signs are obvious. Others are surprisingly subtle. And the final one is the sign many people realize far too late. Sign 1. You stop talking about important things. Think back to the beginning of your relationship. You talked about everything. Your dreams, your worries, your future plans, even random thoughts that crossed your mind during the day. But now, the conversations stay on the surface. Schedules, bills, chores, logistics. And while that may seem harmless, that emotional silence matters. Psychologists call this emotional disengagement. It happens when partners no longer feel safe, interested, or hopeful about deeper connection. Many people believe constant arguing is the biggest threat to a relationship. But in reality, emotional withdrawal can be far more damaging. Conflict means engagement. Silence can mean surrender. Ask yourself, do we still share our inner world with each other? Do I know what my partner has been worried about lately? Do we avoid deeper conversations because they feel uncomfortable? If important topics are repeatedly avoided, distance begins to grow quietly in the background. And that brings us to sign 2. Sign 2. Small resentments keep building. Resentment rarely starts with something dramatic. Most of the time, it starts with small moments. Moments that feel unfair, dismissive, or unappreciated. Maybe one partner feels they're carrying most of the emotional burden. Maybe apologies feel incomplete. Maybe their needs are brushed aside with phrases like, "You're overreacting." Over time, these moments begin to pile up, and little by little, resentment starts taking root. Research in relationship psychology suggests that unresolved resentment changes the way couples interpret each other's behavior. Neutral actions begin to feel negative. Good intentions become harder to see. Compassion slowly starts to shrink. Here's an important question to ask yourself. Do I feel understood and appreciated most of the time? If your honest answer is not really, resentment may already be growing beneath the surface. The problem is that resentment often remains unspoken. People convince themselves it will disappear on its own. Unfortunately, it usually doesn't. And when resentment grows, communication begins to change as well, which leads to sign 3. Sign 3. Conversations turn defensive instead of curious. Healthy communication is not just about speaking calmly. It's about staying curious about your partner's experience. But in struggling relationships, curiosity often gets replaced by defensiveness. Instead of saying, "Help me understand why that upset you," the conversation becomes, "You're making a big deal out of nothing," or, "Well, you do the same thing." Defensiveness blocks repair. It turns discussions into debates about who's right, instead of opportunities to reconnect. One simple shift can make a significant difference. Replace counter-arguments with reflection. Try saying, "I can see why that hurt," or "Tell me more about what you needed in that moment." Responses like these lower tension. They help people feel heard, and they keep the conversation emotionally open. But when defensiveness becomes the default pattern, emotional safety begins to disappear. Sign 4. Physical or emotional intimacy feels like a chore. Intimacy is about much more than physical affection. It includes warmth, playfulness, eye contact, affection, and the feeling of being emotionally close. When intimacy starts feeling forced, avoidant, or purely routine, it can be a sign of deeper disconnection. Now, this doesn't mean passion should feel intense all the time. Long-term relationships naturally evolve, but there's a difference between evolving intimacy and emotional shutdown. Some warning signs include avoiding affection, feeling emotionally numb around your partner, seeing intimacy as an obligation rather than a connection, or rarely experiencing moments of closeness and tenderness. In many cases, this sign is connected to the ones we've already discussed: unspoken resentment, emotional withdrawal, and defensive communication. The good news is that intimacy can often be rebuilt when couples are willing to address the emotional disconnect underneath it. But that requires effort from both people. And that's where sign 5 becomes critical. Sign 5. Problems repeat without real change. Every couple has recurring disagreements. The problem isn't repetition itself. The real question is whether the couple learns and adapts. A dangerous pattern often looks like this. A problem comes up. One or both partners apologize. Nothing meaningfully changes. And a few weeks later, the exact same conflict returns. Over time, this creates something very damaging: hopelessness. People begin to stop believing that repair is possible. Relationship experts sometimes call this gridlock, a state where conflicts feel permanently stuck. Ask yourself, are we actually solving problems or simply calming them down temporarily? Have we made real, concrete changes after repeated conflicts? Real repair involves new behavior, not just repeated apologies. And when problems start to feel unsolvable, people often begin emotionally checking out, which leads directly to sign 6. Sign 6. You feel more alone with your partner than without them. This is one of the most painful signs because it feels so confusing. You're technically together, but emotionally, you feel alone. You may stop reaching out, not because you don't care, but because the responses feel dismissive, distracted, or unavailable. Eventually, loneliness becomes the normal state of the relationship. Psychologically, human beings need emotional responsiveness, the feeling that someone notices you, values you, and responds to your inner experience. When that is consistently missing, connection begins to weaken dramatically. Pay attention to these questions. Do I feel emotionally supported by my partner? Do I feel safer sharing my feelings with friends than with them? Do I feel unseen or emotionally alone in this relationship? Feeling lonely once in a while is normal. Feeling lonely most of the time is a serious warning sign. And that brings us to the final sign, the sign that often determines whether a relationship can recover. Sign 7. One or both partners stop trying. The most dangerous moment in a struggling relationship isn't the loud fight. It's the quiet moment when effort disappears. Maybe one person stops initiating conversations, stops planning time together, stops apologizing, stops caring whether issues get resolved. That emotional shutdown is often a sign of exhaustion or hopelessness. Relationships survive conflict far more often than they survive indifference, because conflict still shows that people care. Indifference suggests they may have stopped believing things can improve. If one or both partners no longer believe the relationship can get better, the connection begins to erode very quickly. But this is also the point where honest intervention matters most. Conversations, counseling, healthy boundaries, and intentional effort. All of these can still make a difference if both people are willing to participate. Ignoring these signs does not guarantee a breakup, but paying attention to them early gives your relationship a chance to recover before distance becomes permanent. Healthy relationships are built on emotional safety, honest communication, mutual effort, and repair. If this video helped you reflect on your relationship, consider subscribing for more psychology-based insights on love, attachment, communication, and emotional wellness. And let me know in the comments, which of these signs do you think people ignore most often? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.